Welcome to the Energy Exchange, a podcast for deep feelers and quiet leaders. Here, we explore what happens when we start working with our natural energy in both our business and personal lives. I'm Colleen Wallach. I'm a highly sensitive professional who spent years untangling patterns of overthinking, people-pleasing, and playing small just to feel safe. Now, I help others like me step more fully into their power without losing the superpower of their softness. We don't have to be loud to be seen, and we don't have to push to be powerful. Everything is energy. Let's start this exchange. Welcome into this week's episode of the Energy Exchange. If you are someone whose mood is very easily affected by other people, or maybe you leave a tense conversation and it lingers with you all day, then it's very likely that you struggle with this topic we're diving into today. So I've been thinking a lot about the contrast between holding space and holding the energy. If you consider yourself a highly sensitive person, you're probably pretty wired for empathy, but how do we manage it in a way that is supportive to the people in our world without getting completely overtaken by other people's stuff? It's natural for us to take in a lot of what's happening around us, but a lot of what you're carrying right now probably has nothing to do with you. It could be your partner's stress, your client's urgency, a friend's anxiety, maybe your team's frustration. And then there's always going to be just that general emotional temperature of the room that you're in. And when you're highly sensitive, you don't just notice that, you tend to internalize it. Like you'll feel it in your body. And before you realize it, their stress becomes your stress. Their mood becomes your mood. Their urgency becomes your urgency. And now suddenly you're operating from a nervous system that isn't even fully yours. But yet it affects your mood, your productivity, your other relationships. It can even affect your business. We'll get into that in a little bit. But it's just this really big drain that quietly runs in the background. And that's a big deal. If someone else's energy can shift your nervous system, if their stress can become your stress, you are no longer operating from your center. So we have to get really intentional about how we manage that wiring. Okay, so let's get clear on the difference between holding space and holding the energy. Holding space just means that you're present. Someone's going through something, they want to talk. If we're part of their village, we want to be there. In its highest form, it feels regulated. So even if they're having chaos in their world, we don't automatically flip the switch into chaotic energy for ourselves. We can stay steady. We can observe what's happening without merging into it. And we don't go home after that conversation and think about that thing all night when we've got our own stuff to think about. That is regulated empathy. That is holding space. Holding the energy is very different. It's absorption. It's feeling the need to fix. It's ruminating, letting that run in the background long after the conversation has passed. It's when we carry that energy into the next room, our next meeting, the next day. That is unregulated empathy. And if you grew up hypervigilant, maybe overgiving, people-pleasing, reading the room constantly, it makes sense that your nervous system learned to merge instead of observe. And for me personally, I've gotten a lot stronger with my boundaries over the years, and I'm more willing to speak up for myself and not get taken over so easily. But I still struggle with that balance sometimes of, am I maintaining my energy right now, or am I being an asshole? So my goal is to make sure I'm still a caring person, but not one who absorbs everything. Sensitivity is the gift. We don't want to lose that. Absorption is the habit. These are not the same thing. And I want to relate this beyond personal relationships. I tend to think about these things in the context of friendships or partnerships, but for my fellow business owners, this really does impact your business. You will not move clearly and powerfully in your business if you're making decisions based on other people's fears, maybe old narratives you grew up with, family stories about money, the stress that your clients are carrying. Think about how much of that can shape your day. If you are taking on the stress your client is dealing with, or you are holding other people's emotional weather, you are going to struggle to prioritize what matters in your business. You're going to get very easily swayed by other people's urgency. And now we're operating our business from their nervous system instead of our own. So the question becomes, how do we actually shift into that place of holding space without holding the energy? How can we care deeply without absorbing? And it really comes down to energetic boundaries. This isn't about being less kind, less empathetic. It's not about hardening yourself, but we have to get more regulated. The goal is to stay in our own nervous system. I don't know about you, but my nervous system has enough going on its own. Like, I don't need to throw gasoline onto that fire. And I think the most important thing is to remember that distinction of the gift versus the habit. Your empathy is a gift. Your sensitivity is a gift. Your ability to read a room is a freaking gift. But absorption is a habit. And for highly sensitive people, this was formed over years or decades in hypervigilance, maybe survival mode, maybe some people pleasing. We've blurred the line between the gift and the coping mechanism. Sensitivity is the gift, absorption is the habit, and habits can be broken. But first we have to notice it. Like, we can't shift what we can't see. So if you're feeling heavy or maybe charged in an interaction, ask yourself in real time, is this mine? Is this current? Is this my responsibility? We're just trying to interrupt that pattern. And then we want to regulate. So if someone that we're interacting with is maybe a little dysregulated and we notice our body shifting in response, we want to pause. So we slow our breath, feel your feet on the ground, lower your voice. We don't need to match or mirror their intensity to show that we care. Third, we stop fixing. Absorption can show up as the need to solve something. Holding space would sound like, oh, that sounds really hard, or I'm here, what do you need? Not, let me take this over and handle this for you. And the hardest one, for me at least, is we have to do our very best to leave it where it happened. So when the conversation ends, we let it end. We don't need to replay it in the car. We don't need to carry it into dinner. We don't need to bring it to the next client call. Visualize yourself literally handing it back. That's the energetic boundary. And you might have to practice really tolerating the discomfort around that. It's going to feel wrong. You're going to feel like an asshole. But that's just an old habit losing its grip. So we're not being less empathetic, we are being more regulated. And the more regulated you are, the more sustainable your empathy and your caring actually become. We don't eliminate sensitivity, that's the gift. We train it. All right, that feels like a cool power statement to end things on, so I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you for listening. If this topic spoke to you, I'd love it if you'd share it with someone in your world who might need it. You can also connect with me on Instagram at the.energy.exchange. That's with an X. All right, guys, I will chat with you next week.